All right then, Fly at Night, Bill Henderson and Chilliwack from 1977. We are in standard tuning for this tutorial. The opening refrains to this one for about the first 45 seconds is acoustic guitar. I'm going to show you how to play it on this guitar because we're going to be jumping into electric guitar for the remainder of the track. But know that the beginning of this one is acoustic guitar. And the very famous opening to this one, we're dealing with 4 chords. D, G7. So a G7 is a G chord with the 2nd fret of the high E, not the 3rd fret, right? And we're kind of, as I strum this, I'm kind of muting out the A string, right? But we're not going to be strumming it, we're going to be arpeggiating notes out of it. And the 3rd chord that we're going to be playing is an E minor 9, right here on the top 4 strings. You can add the low E, mute out the A string if you're going to strum this chord, right? 2nd fret of the D string, open G, 3rd fret of the B string, 2nd fret of the high E. And the final chord, C add 9, right here. C chord with the 3rd fret of the B. So this 3rd fret of the B string is doing a whole lot of heavy lifting during the opening here. It's ever present, right? It's there in the D, you're just keeping it planted, right? And then the C add 9. So we're starting in D, we're just going to arpeggiate down and back up to the B string, right? Kind of like that. Right? Then we're going to ride into this G7 with an open 2-3 of the low E. And then just drop right into the G7. So you're skipping over the A string and the B string on the way down. You're catching the 2 middle strings and then down to the high E and back up to the B. Like that, right? And then we're going to ride this G7 off to the E minor 9 with a 3-2 open. And then you're going to grab the 2 middle strings again, dropping into this E minor 9, 2nd fret of the D. And then you drop your middle finger down on that 2, right? And then catch the B string on the way back up. Right? And then we're going to ride into the C add 9 with an open 2-3 of the A. And then just ride down the top 5 strings and back up to the D. Right? And then start over. Bit awkward, some of those chords when you're first learning them, right? So you're going to repeat that 4 times and then he's going to start singing over it, and then we're going to drop into a regular C shaped chord here, but with our pinky down here on the 3rd fret of the high E, and we're going to go C into G 3 times. Right? So we're going to go down the top 5 strings, skip over the B again, right? And then catch it on the upstroke. And then when you get back up to the D, you're not going to get the 2nd fret of the D string. You're going to lift that off and then drop into G, right? Just lift your 2 fingers that are holding the A and the D string, move them up to the low E and the A. Right? And then you drop into G, and again, skip over the A string on the way down. Again, skip over the B string on the way down as well, right? We're going to go from C into G 3 times. Before dropping back into C, a very quick open A. to A minor twice, but the initial D, we're going to start with our pinky on the 3rd fret of the high E and then pull it off to D. And then ride up the strings. Back to the E, back to the B. Off to A minor, but we're going to start the A minor with our index off the 1st fret of the B. And then drop it on, right? And then back to D. Just down and back up, right? And then just a lightly strummed A minor to finish. And that is the acoustic intro to this one, nice and slow. Right, 4 times, and then you drop into C to G with your pinky on the 3rd fret of the high E. Going to ride on that A minor, just on the A, D, and G string, so you can really, hit a power chord if you like. Right, so we're just building on that A, right? Bump, 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 once the electric guitars come in. And then we're going to drop into D for 3 bars with double hits. Kind of like that, right? In the 3rd bar, we're just going to embellish it a little bit, right? Hit the D, drop onto the sus, off to the D, lift your middle finger off the 2 to the open E, and then back on again, right? Kind of like that, right? So coming off that A, D, 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 right? And then we're into the next verse with the electric guitars, and we're playing the exact same progression that we played during the opening, but now with regular chords. D to a regular G to a regular E minor to a regular C. So we're not going into G7, we're not going into the E minor 9, we're not going into the C add 9, we're playing straight chords. D to G to E minor to C. Twice. Hang in C and go C to G 3 times, just like we did at the opening. C to G, C to G, and then down to D, off to A minor, back to D, back to A minor. Right? It's the same progression, however, we're not using all those 7 and 9 chords, right? We're just using straight chords. And then we drop into this. Just a little interlude before the next section of the song, right? So we're going from G, just on the top 5, or bottom 5 strings, I should say, G to C to G to C to G, C, G to C to G, C to G, right? So we're just going G to C, G to C, G to C, G to C, right? And finishing in G. Now, over top of that is another guitar playing this. So little double stops on the 2 middle strings, 5 of the D, 4 of the G, and then we're going to go off to 2 of the G while still holding that G note there on the 5, and then back onto 4, and then onto 5, back to 4, and then back off to 2, right? And then the second playthrough of this is going to change a little bit. Next time, we're just going to go 4 to 5, 4 to 5. And then back off to 5 and 4. So we're just keeping our our ring finger planted on that 5 of the D, right? Right, and then we're into the section of the song, right? A minor, G to D. Just A minor to G to D twice. And then he's going to sing a verse over this, so we're going to hang in the A minor for 2 bars once he starts singing, and then go to G and then into D. G to D. A minor for 2 bars. And then G to D. And then A minor for 1 bar. And that leads into the first guitar solo, which is in the key of D, using the D natural minor scale. It's kind of D minor pentatonic for the most part, with a few notes pulled out of the D natural minor scale. And we're starting with these unison bends. Right there, right? So we're on the 10 of the B, 12 of the G, little unison bend, right? Little vibrato, back it up 2 spots, back it up 1 spot, hit it again, slide out of it, back to 10 and 12, move it up 2 spots, move it up 3 spots, do the same thing, hit it again, slide out, right? So we're finishing on the 15 of the B, 17 of the G. Then we're into the main body of the solo, which starts with this little scale run. That right there. So we're going right down the 5s and 7s with that lick right there. Right, hammering on 5 to 7, 5 to 7 of the A, pull that back off to 5, and then grab the 7 of the low E. And then we're going to play that same lick on the A and D string, and then again on the D and G string. Kind of like that, right? Now, when we get down to the G and B string, we're going to play it again, but we're going to have to shift frets up to the 6s and 8s. Right? Now we're hammering on 6 to 8 of the B, pulling it back off to 6 and grabbing the 7 of the G. And then we drop into this lick. Little repeating lick. We're on the 6, 8 of the B. Little bend release off to 6, grab the 7 of the G. And then 6 back onto 8 again with a double hit. Kind of like that, right? So you're going to repeat that 4 times, coming out of that little scale run. Right, and then we drop into this. So you're going to grab that 8, give it a full step bend, grab the 8 of the high E with your pinky, hit it 3 times, and then release that bend on the B string off to 6, back to 8, back to 6. Kind of like that, right? Right, that's the opening of the solo. Then we're into this. So we're going to grab that 8 of the B again, give it another full step bend, and then we're going to grab the 8 of the high E and just pick it like 8 or 9 times, right? Kind of like that. And then we're going to drop right into this. So we're going to shift up here to this kind of unison bend position, though we're not actually hitting unison bends. We're going to bend the 11 of the B string and then hit that 8 of the high E 5 times, twice. Kind of like that, right? Now we're going to repeat this 5 more times, but we're only going to hit that 8 of the high E 3 times the next 5 times. So the first 2 times you're hitting it 5 times, and then the next 5 times you're going to hit it 3 times. Right? Kind of like that. Right? In context. Right? And at this point, we're going to shift the whole position up 2 spots to 10 of the high E and 13 of the B. And then you're going to do the same thing. A little bend of that 13, grab the 10 of the high E, and then you're going to repeat that, but you're going to slow it down. Like 4 times, right? The first one is a little bit quick, kind of like that, and then slow it down. And then 2 more quick ones, right? So you're doing that, I think, what, 7 times? The first one quick, the final 2 quick, and the 4 in between kind of slow, right? So kind of like this. Right, into this. So same position, we're grabbing the 13 of the high E, bend release, full step bend release into this. Just a little back and forth from the 10 of the high E to the 13 of the B, and then finishing with a full step bend on that 13 of the B. Finishing the solo with this. So we're just sliding into 15 of the B, 13 onto 15 of the high E into a whole bunch of full step bends. And then you finally release it off to 13, grab the 15 of the B, jump up to 20 of the high E, full step bend with vibrato to finish the solo. That is the main solo. So let's take it from the top with the unison bends. Back it up 2, back it up 1, hit it again, slide out. Now we're going to send them up 2, up 3, slide out. Right into that little scale run. Repeating lick. Nice and slow, fast. Right? Right back to the intro. For 2 repeats. Right? And then we're going to have a verse over this. A minor for 2 bars, arpeggiated this time, into G, down to D, and again, G, right, and then you're going to go back to A minor to G to D, but with just 1 bar of A for the that section there, right? And then we're getting into the outro solo, and the outro solo starts with some more unison bends, a little bit buried in the mix this time. Back it up 2 spots. back it up one, and then we're going to play a little lick like that, right? Coming off this one on the 7-9. Just a little bend of that 9, release off to 7, grab the 9 of the D, back to the 7 of the G. Kind of like that, right? Ascend it, move it up, same lick. Now we're going to play that same little lick that we just played, but now on the 15, 17 of the B, right, bend that 17, grab the 16 of the G, back to the 15 of the B, right? And then we're going to grab more unison bends, this time on the 13, 15s. Triple hit, back it up one spot, and then move it up. And then we're going to back it up to this one on the 10, 12. Back it up 2 spots, back it up 1 spot, and before dropping into the outro solo proper, this little lick. Something like that, right? A little bar here on the 7s of the G and the B, and just doing a little pull off from 8 to 7, right? Before dropping into the outro solo, right? And then we drop into the outro solo. So let's run through this outro solo first, and then we'll dig into how to play it. Something like that. So now we're soloing in D major, and we're starting here with this little repeating lick that we're going to repeat twice. Just on the 5 of the B string, a little bend release off to 3, grab the 4 of the G. Right, repeat that twice. Into this. So we're going to slide into 7 of the B string, hit it twice, drop onto 8, right into a full step bend. Kind of like that, right? Then you're going to release that back to the natural note, pull it off to 7, drop onto 9 of the G. Kind of like that, right? Back onto the 8 for another full step bend, and you're going to basically repeat the same lick you just played. Again, right? But then you're going to go back down to the 7 of the B and finish with that. So 7 of the B onto a 9 of the G, off to 7, back to 9, back to 7. Right, to finish that whole lick. So from the beginning. Right, into this little lick. Before moving on, just sliding into 11 of the G, hammering on 10 to 12, back to 10 of the B. Kind of like that, into this repeating lick. Just little half step bends of the 12 of the B, releasing, pulling off to 10. Back onto 12, back off to 10, right? Repeated 4 times. Into this repeating lick. Just little full step bends of the 12 of the high E, off to 10 of the B, 3 times. Right, and then we're going to move up the neck, but before we do, let's recap. Right, and then we're into this. So we're sliding into 15 of the B string, and then we're going to go 14, 15, 17 of the high E. Pick it about 5 or 6 times. And then you're going to back it up to 15 again, off to 14, back to 15, and back onto 17 again, and pick it 3 times. So kind of like this. Right? Into this. Just 15 of the B down to 14 of the high E. Choke it off, right? Into this. So 17 of the high E, 15, 14. Back onto 15, back off to 14. And finishing with a double hit on the 15 of the B string. So from the beginning of this section. Right into this. So we're going right down this little D shape here. 14 of the G, 15 of the B, 14 of the high E, and then we're going to do a little trill between 14 and 15 of the high E. And then grab the 15 of the B. Roll it right back down to the 15 of the high E. And then you're going to do another little trill between 14 and 15 after picking the 15 up to 17 of the B. Back to the 14, and then 15 onto 17 of the B, and then coming off that 17 of the B, we're going to go off to 13 of the B string, which is a bit of an odd note here, not in the D major scale, it's out of the minor scale, and we're going to finish with this repeating lick. So you kind of just plant your index there on that 13 of the B string, pull off 15 off to 13, and grab the 16 of the G. Right? And just repeat like 12 times. And then the final time, just a little pull off from 15 to 13 back to 15. So from that little section, when we move up the neck, nice and slow. Right, and that is the end of the outro solo. So let's take that outro solo from the top here. Right, and that is the outro solo, and then we just drop right back into this again. Until the end of the track. And there you go. That is how you play Fly at Night by Bill Henderson and Chilliwack from 1977. Certainly hope you enjoyed the tutorial, found it helpful. If you did, please hit that like button right down there. Drop me a subscribe if you haven't done that already, as that would be very kind. Hope you're well out there in your little guitar corner of the world, wherever that may find you, and we will see you next time. Cheers.